Hello, and welcome to Club Moffat Talks. I'm Joseph McNeely, and I am an instruction librarian here at Moffat.
And I'm Ryan Samuelson. I am the Associate University Librarian for Public Services.
And before we kick off and start with what we've been reading, watching, etc., I'm just going to go ahead and state up front that this particular episode is already not going according to plan. We had planned to have a guest this month, and because life happens, our guest was not able to join us, and we're hoping that we'll be able to have them next month. But so this is going to be a little bit of a riff, a verbal jazz concert, if you will. Um, that being said, we always start off with what we've been reading, watching, doing. So what has been up with you in that respect, Ryan?
Honestly, nothing in the last month, really. I've had other things, I've had life incur upon me to some extent this particular month, some health problems, some other things, and I just haven't been doing much of anything. I will say this, however, Joe, I've been having weird dreams lately. In fact, the other day, you came into my office and I looked at you for a second and you looked at me and said, "You're looking at me kind of weird." I go, "Yeah, I was going to tell you something, but I'm just now realizing it wasn't real. It was in a dream." And then you looked at me very strangely and you said, "But Ryan, this is the dream. You're still dreaming."
Uh-huh.
So it just tells me that you coming to my office is imprinted enough in my psyche that I actually dream you coming into my office in my dreams to
Uh,
comment on my dreams once in a while. Just I thought I'd let you know that. So
well, that's yeah. That certainly seems like something I would do, honestly. So, yes. Uh,
I'm sorry I don't have much more. I mean, there really hasn't been a whole heck of a lot going on as far as me watching media or reading books of various sorts.
yeah.
Okay, I'll throw one thing out there. For those who don't know, the last 2 years, DC Comics has been putting out something called the Absolute series, which is a reimagining of their main characters, mostly Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman as underdogs. Again, Batman in it is not a multimillionaire.
Mm,
Um, Superman is not born to wealthy elite parents. Wonder Woman is the Amazons are a slave race.
mm.
So it is a reimagining of the superheroes in an underdog situation rather than from a point of privilege. And it is fantastic. Anyone who is interested in that.
Okay. I mean, sometimes it's nice to take some of those classic, really, I, I was looking for a better word or than just classic, but they're sort of imprinted in the public consciousness, and there's a very definitive view of the way that character is. And sometimes it's nice to be able to go in there and play with the character a little bit and see how the character might have evolved if a different thing had happened anywhere along the way.
And I think you brought this up last week. It was a Batman comic you came apart, where basically somebody, and this is something that's happened in the public consciousness to some extent, is Bruce Wayne better served by doing philanthropy than putting on a weird bat costume and ring around in the night and stuff
Yeah.
like that? And this is sort of a response to that. It's a response to the idea of a Batman who is literally he is a civic engineer is who this Batman is.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. Mhm. I can see how he might actually better serve Gotham in that kind of capacity. Yeah. No, that tracks. Uh, I am still in the position of not doing sorry, a lot of reading. Um, I've been, this is a little bit self-indulgent perhaps, but I've been reading stories that I've written to my wife at night, like kind of a chapter at a time, to kind of get her input on it And it's really, really selfish because I'm doing it on these stories that I've completed because I want to make sure that she has all of the necessary background information so that when I start reading stories to her that I'm actually still working on and haven't finished yet, then she'll understand like how we got to that place and may be able to help me overcome some of the hurdles that I have built in front of my own path, you know. Um, Other than that, though, I'm not reading anything for entertainment currently. I have a couple of titles sort of on my to be read pile, but I haven't picked them up yet. We've been doing a thing this month where we've been watching scary, spooky, thrillery science fiction things. And we decided that we'd try working our way through a few different series. And the way we've been doing it is that we've been interspersing it. So, like we were doing we did the Underworld movies and we did the Scream movies. So we did like Scream 1 and then the first Underworld and then Scream 2 and the second Underworld, like that,
Yeah, yeah.
trading them off. And we've been doing things like that through the month. Um, and right now we're doing the bizarre every other night double feature kind of thing of uh of the Harry Potter movies and the Alien movies. Um, but yeah, it's a thing that we get into where it's all like, well, thematically it's October, let's do something like that.
No, that's cool that you do that. That's it's very cool to some extent.
Yeah. But our uh our daughter and her husband were over this weekend and had us watch a movie that we hadn't seen yet. And it's not a new movie. It's a few years old. And we just hadn't seen it. But we watched the movie Get Out,
Hmm.
um, which I felt like was traumatizing as we were watching it. And very much as we were watching it, we had the vibe of, oh no, you have to leave there immediately. Um, and he did not leave there immediately, and really, really should have.
Jordan Peele's first movie, a real surprise to most people because most people knew him for his comedic, and actually almost stoner comedy is what he's really well known for.
Yeah,
And this was amazing. And he's had a lot of movies since then that have also been very well received, very interesting um, horror genre. That it's more like thought experiments on horror genre,
yeah,
breaking out of the typical tropes of a horror movie or film.
yeah. Well, and we had seen not this month, but we'd seen the movie Nope that is his, and had really enjoyed it. So it's not like this movie wasn't on our list. We just hadn't gotten around to doing it, and then did. There's a few really brilliant bits of acting in Get Out. It's and we were watching it in a way where we could pause it, and there was at least once where I paused it and said, "Okay, if this actor did not get an award for this role, they absolutely should have, because of the way that the story progresses, and there's places where there's the false front with an inner turmoil, and you can kind of see all of those things happening on someone's face. Just brilliant bit of acting, and I guess directing, writing too, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, really good. Um, we'd already seen all of them before, but rewatching the Scream movies, I was very much struck by the fact that they should have stopped after the third one. Um, if you haven't watched them or whatever, the third movie to me really wraps it up as a trilogy of movies. The storyline very much seems complete. And then they made more of them after that, and I feel like all of the later ones suffer by comparison. I don't think any of them are as good as the first three. Um,
Well, we had talked about possibly having that as of our topic today, the idea that the overuse of sequels and franchises.
yeah,
We'd also talked about something else I'll just mention real quick. We had talked about possibly doing uh, the change of genres for away from books and more into film and manga.
yeah,
And since I did a little bit of homework, I want to get my homework out there before we decide. But
okay,
I actually looked it up. In 2024, the best-selling book was The Women, which sold 1.5 million copies. The best-selling comic was Jujutsu Kaisen, which sold 7.5 million copies, and the best-selling film was uh, Inside Out 2, which had 160 million people attend. So the cartoon, the comic books are 5 times more popular than the books, and 100 times more popular than the films are 100 times more popular than the books are.
yeah. That that's kind of fun to see. Yeah. Uh, I do know that when you see or hear or read advice about being a storyteller of some kind, being a writer of some kind, that one of the first things that you have to confront is the medium. It's like, okay, I have something that I feel like needs to be said, or some story to tell. It's like, okay, do I want to do this through poetry? Do I want to do it as a novella or a short story? Is this going to be like an epic, several hundreds of pages? Is it something that could or should be told with a heavily illustrated element? Should this be a comic book? Should it be a graphic novel? And that's one of the very initial things that you're supposed to kind of determine because it does make a difference in how you're going to put it together. Because, if you're going to do any kind of prose format, you're probably going to end up creating outlines and bullet points or something like that. But if you're going to have a visual element, you're going to end up storyboarding, you know, and that's a different approach.
It's interesting too because I remember last week we met with some faculty members. And I remember at least one of the English faculty members we went with was painfully aware of the fact that they're losing potential story makers and storytellers to the mass comm department. They're going into film and video
Yeah,
rather than going into an English degree
yeah,
to tell stories. And I thought that was interesting that not only were they aware of it, but they were very cognizant of how that has changed over time.
yeah. I think that there's a thing that has happened with that where it's actually because of our technology, because like for a long, long time, writing has been easy. As far as just the mechanics, the actual literal mechanics of writing, having a pen or a pencil and some paper, or a typewriter, or a word processor, or a computer, and now you can actually, even type on your tablet or your phone, and you can do that easily. But you've always been able to do that easily, and the moving picture has always been more difficult in the past, where you had to have very bulky equipment with actual reels of film, and tripods and stands for that, and where the technology for that, as it has been electronified and digitized, where I could make a movie on my cell phone, and that's a big change.
Yeah, there have been a few documentaries, especially with the rise of people like Steven Spielberg, who have talked about the fact that just the adaptation of the 7 millimeter film reel and the 7 millimeter movie camera led to a huge influx of new um, filmmakers in the 1970s who were just shooting in the backyards and
Yeah.
things of that nature. So yeah, it's obviously gotten easier and easier. Everyone now carries a cell phone in their pocket, which shoots film quality video, basically.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I know that I have, for business purposes, recorded videos on my phone showing new displays in the library or things like that. It's like, hey, come to the library and check this out that I just did on my phone, or kind of a video walking tour, kind of a thing that I've just done on my phone. Um, so, yeah,
but it is interesting because studies have shown that um, reading engages different parts of the brain than watching a film does, or looking at a graphic novel. They all engage very different parts of the brain.
mhm,
And at least I'm aware of the fact when dealing with English classes and dealing with students that the newest generation, Gen Z, their reading comprehension, their reading skill is not where it used to be. Let me put it that way. Now,
yeah,
again, this could be viewed as a bad thing, could be viewed as a good thing. I'm just stating the fact that it's changed and it's something people need to be aware of.
yeah. I do think that it is interesting because I don't know that we've become, but we've changed the way that we communicate in ways that we almost always want to add a visual element. I mean,
Well,
because,
take, for instance, maybe the Moffat Talks podcast, which started off being just a podcast, being just audio, just an audio tape. There was no video associated with it. And we quickly realized people responded better if they could see our faces.
yeah, yeah, it's true. I mean, just something as simple as a phone text message used to be words only, but kind of quickly there were, oh, hey, these are the tips and tricks you do to put a smiley face into your text message. And now we can do, cats and dogs and aliens and various fruits and vegetables or whatever into a text message. Um, which I think are supposed to be able to help you convey thought process or emotion, but I think a lot of them are just for fun. Hey, I thought it would be really funny if I put a pig face at the end of this, comment.
And they've taken on meanings of their own too. I mean, beyond what the normal meaning is, there is always slang, and it's interesting to see emoji slang. It's interesting to see that develop over time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's funny because it is one of those things where it's like it's an idea that, oh, this is a new thing, but it isn't,
No.
because we've always had symbols and signs that were used as warnings or indicators for various things. Those basically just an emblem, a logo, kind of a thing, and for at least 100 years, and probably way
Oh,
longer.
much, much, much more than that. I mean, one of the things we found out by looking at deciphering ancient runes, R-U-N-E, runes, and deciphering like ancient wall scribblings in places like ancient Rome and things like that. Things like graffiti, things like, Bob was here, things like people doing doodles or, saying, I hate my teacher, or, just
Uh,
uh, com complaint mails to saying, this person is terrible, you should fire them. It goes back as long as the printed word has existed to some extent, and even things like memes. I mean, I remember the word origin of OK. We don't quite sure where OK came from, but we think it came from the weird meme of misspelling words to make fun of people. And it was originally all correct, spelled with an O and a K instead of an A and a C. But again, that was sort of a meme type thing that was happening in the mid 19th century, and we think memes is a modern idea, but no, these inside jokes, these inside um, ways of expressing things within symbols and words have always been part of humanity ever since we started using symbols and words.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking of, and I have read some articles and things about this, but I was thinking about little signs or symbols that have been used by various types of traveling people to put on corners of buildings or signposts and things, and just a small symbol, but you would see it and you'd go, okay, this is a safe place to go, or oh, this place has a dog, or oh, avoid this place. And it would just be a little symbol that people that were not aware of what it meant would just ignore, you know. Um, and I guess that's really the way signs and symbols work in general.
And again, we also see, again, the early Christians would use the fish. So that, again, that sort of um, symbology, secret symbology has been around forever.
Yeah, yeah. I Well, and it's funny too because how a relatively simple symbol, logo, or whatever is so identifiable. Um, I'm thinking of, you know, curved arches that might appear over a place where one would buy inexpensive fast food. But you see that and you have that immediate connotation, that recognition. Okay, I know what that is. And it's just that. That's all it is, you know. And I feel like there's a lot of things that we do that. We have that instant recognition. Um, and I also realized about 30 years ago, I realized that reading is really just pattern recognition.
Yeah.
This when the Disney animated Pocahontas came out and was being advertised everywhere on TV, um, it had that sort of stylized logo, the way that the letters were done. I have no idea what font or whatever they used for that, but it was very stylized. And our daughter, who could not read, saw that on something, a box of cereal or something, and went Pocahontas because she had seen that collection, that grouping of symbols, and it would say Pocahontas. And so she knew that that meant Pocahontas.
She recognized the font type. Yeah.
Yeah, she knows, she's like, oh, that's what that is. And she was barely talking, it's like 2, 3, something like that. But yeah, just that recognizing the pattern and attributing a definition, a meaning to it. Yeah.
And it's obviously something that we as humans think very strongly to. It's tied to our emotional states too. If you see, we talk about symbols and icons, and they have some real meaning.
Mm.
Flags. I mean, we're a species that literally makes hey, here's a piece of cloth which represents our nation state. I mean, that's just um, we have symbology on the mind on our minds constantly, basically.
Yeah. Well, and I think we've had some discussions and I am not well versed in this topic, but I believe we've had some discussions about um, like family heraldry, where you'd have, oh, well, this household, this whole family line is represented by this color elk on this background with a diagonal line crossed through it, or whatever the symbology is. And that's interesting too. Well, and then you take the animals out of it, and you have just that interweave of certain colors and certain patterns, and you get that heraldic uh, clan tartan of the Scots-Irish peoples, that there are people who would just look at that pattern and go, okay, I know what family you're from.
Well, it is also it's a very simple way of saying this is who I am. I mean, for example, you're wearing two pins today. I mean, that is a way of saying these are things that represent me. And
Sure.
it's a shorthand, so we don't have to talk to people. We can see, oh, he's wearing this symbol. I know he's part of this clan. I know he
Right.
stands for these type of things.
Yeah.
And so it's a way of identifying people very quickly and very easily. We like putting things in boxes, I think. And so I think when we do things like that, when we use that type of symbology, I think it's a way for us to basically help us sort things into boxes, which actually I'm against personally. And I think that's why a lot of times symbols are overused. The
Mm.
symbol becomes more important sometimes than what it represents, I think, in our society. And I think that's a problem. Um,
Yes. Yes. I absolutely agree with that because there is a thing where a symbol of something begins to be so associated with the thing that any disrespect of the item is viewed as complete disrespect and hatred for yeah, it's like the way that we handle or respond to our flag in this country is a big, huge deal. And I don't know that I feel like that sometimes the amount of attention that is paid to how that is handled or treated or respected or disrespected is not at the same level as, what's happening, you know. Um, I probably didn't say that well, but it's it is weird. And then this is me not carrying on this conversation because there's stuff that I'm really angry about that some folks are doing now that no one's commenting on. It's just like, well, that's fine. So I'm going to steer away from that
okay.
and go back to something else because that's the smarter, wiser thing to do at this point in time. Um, or I could just have the rant and edit it out and
No,
or
no, no, no. We'll move on to something else. Okay, let's talk about symbology for a second, because I
sure.
want to talk about graphic novels. Let's talk
Okay.
about how unique graphic novels are, and that everything seems to flow back into graphic novels because graphic novels seem to combine, as I was talking about, film, the visual mediums, and literature, the prose mediums. And I think graphic novels are the happy medium between those. I think they're the
Uh-huh.
way. I mean, you were talking about storyboarding. If you're going to go into something storyboarding, every single film starts off as a comic, basically, that they storyboard and then they make into a film. And to some extent, anytime someone's writing something, they're putting together a mental comic book in their mind because they're visualizing what's happening and then they're putting it into words. So it's interesting that comic books aren't as popular as they could be, I guess is my point. Because it seems to be the default. It seems to be the place that we all sort of start at to some extent. Now, that being true, they did a study recently which blew my mind that some people don't have the inner picture, and it was a large percentage. I want to say it was something like 20%
Mhm.
of people don't have that inner picture in their head. But it seems to me that the inner picture is both the image and the thought, which is really what a graphic novel is, what a comic is. It's
Mhm.
the static picture and a static thought.
Yeah.
Comments?
Well, it's interesting to me because the the comics, the graphic novels that I like the best are the ones that are able to achieve that thing where the visual imagery and the narration go together so well, or at least are both very well done, because there are artists who are able to give such mobility, such velocity to these stagnant pictures that you feel like they're moving. Um,
Um, Scott McCloud is well known for putting out his landmark piece, Understanding Comics. And it really it is landmark because he talks about things that people didn't really ever talk about, like pacing. Pacing is a major part of comic books that not a lot of artists are aware of, or the good ones are. The really good ones are aware of it, but there's a lot of bad artists or people getting into artistry and stuff like that who don't understand the idea of pacing. They don't understand that your eyes will move across the page and you can control how fast they're moving from one vision to another by the way you lay it out and by what you have on the page. And that will actually control the pace. And one of the things he did to illustrate it was comparing Western comics with Eastern comics, because Western comics typically tend to be action based and they would move quite quickly, where a lot of the Eastern comics he would show would have more retrospective type artwork or moments in the storyline, and they would seem to move much more slowly. And it has to do with spacing. It has to use, again, how the figures are used on the page. It has to do with how crowded things are. There's a lot to it. It's a very interesting, in-depth science as far as how just something as simple as an image affects time, which I thought was really, for those of you who have never read Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, do it. It's one of the best scholarly look into an art form that isn't studied enough, I think.
yeah. Um, and is itself a graphic novel, which
Hmm.
is beautiful. Yeah. Um, yeah, that's a good one. The well, and that's a thing that we've discussed too. Like, well, and I mentioned earlier, just that idea about what your medium is going to be when you're conveying something. And I so appreciated the fact that he decided that the best way to share his information about comics was by creating a comic. Uh, I think it was by far the best way to relay that information. Um, very, very good choice. Yeah,
Because not only does he give you the exact example, but the example he gives is it.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
literally him telling you how it's done is showing you how it's done.
yeah. It's yeah. It that is a good one. That would be one that I think that almost, if you have any interest in comics or in literature or in art, any of those, you should read that book.
I don't think you know this, but my Discord, my little I forget what they're called, but my little avatar
Uh-huh.
is his universal face,
Oh, okay.
which is just a circle, two dots, and a half circle
Uh-huh.
or a line. Sorry, it's just
Yeah,
I forgot it. That one's just a line.
yeah,
But he says that again, talking about pattern recognition, human beings see faces everywhere. In fact, if you draw a circle, two dots, and a line, that represents a face in almost every culture in the entire world.
yeah.
And I use that as my avatar because I thought it'd be funny to have for my avatar for it to be the universal face, as he
Sure.
says it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I can see why you would make that choice. Yeah. Um, wow. So where are we? What are we doing? What are we
We're
doing?
filling up a lot of time with nonsense, but it's
Well, you
working
know
out for
what?
us.
That traditionally that has worked for us. So I mean, I'm not necessarily against that, but uh, okay. So we were talking about
We've talked about a lot of things. We've talked
yeah.
about the fact that how people tell stories has changed.
Mhm.
We've talked about graphic novels. We've talked about film. We've talked about
Well, this is a little bit funny, but I feel like because we have talked about comics and we've talked about film and we've talked about series and different things. This is a thing that I had mentioned to you earlier in the day before we were recording, but is a thing that sort of goes with what we're talking about now, which is the idea that there's a trend now, well, not now, just for like the last 50 years or so, where film companies are taking comics, cartoons, and turning them into live action movies and TV series.
do you
Uh,
think that may have to do with pattern recognition? Oh, I recognize that.
in some ways, I think that that is a thing. I mean, I know that Disney has gotten on this kick of taking all of their animated movies and making them live action. Um, and I have to do air quotes on that because they're doing it with things that you can't make live action, you know? So their live action movies are heavily animated. I don't care if they're heavily animated using computer generated graphics or not. They're still heavily animated. So to call them live action is kind of ludicrous. But on the other hand, say several years ago, they did the, live action Scooby-Doo movies, having been based on the comics. And of course, there's been a big thing about like turning video games into live action movies and, things like that. And there are some that I feel like translate well or have been translated well. Not necessarily that the translation would have been successful no matter who did it or how, but there have been some that were done well and then some not so well.
Do you think that it's maybe like a form of shorthand to some extent? Because I'm just thinking about things like mythology, folklore does a lot of this as well, retelling the old story over and over again. The idea is that you don't have to bring everybody up to pace. You don't have to bring them up to speed as far as who these characters are or what their motives are. You can suddenly just say Spider-Man. Everyone knows what you're talking about.
Right. I think the answer is simpler. I think it's because they're lazy and or impatient. And the reason I say that is because specifically looking at traditional animation where you have multiple drawn images, 16, 30, 100 multiple drawn images to give you a second of film versus having some actors and stage settings do it. I think it's quicker.
Could it also be, though, that you're saying that the production's lazy? Well, doesn't it also kind of say something about the audience? The audience is lazy. I don't want to think about this too much. I want it to be, oh, this is a story I liked. I want a continuation of that story or that story told again.
Well, I would say in that case that the audience is impatient, is that the audience is impatient, where that they want to be able to consume the story as quickly as possible. And there is that thing where you have a comic book or a cartoon that is many, many, many episodes to or issues to generate this story arc. And if you can take that story arc and live action it into a 90-minute movie, then you're getting that storyline to the audience much more quickly. And so I do think that's a thing. Yeah, I do think it is.
And I just realized we're kind of continuing our conversation we had earlier, but to let the audience in more on what we're talking about franchises, we're talking about sequels, we're talking about taking a character we all know and rebooting them, revising them, doing a twist on a classic story. And again, you talked about the last 50 years, but I'm thinking back about how many Robin Hood stories have been told over and over again. How many King Arthur stories have been told over and over and over again?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. And that when you look at some of those, see, in some ways, I feel like that those aren't necessarily the kinds of stories that we were talking about in a more critical fashion, because you have this thing where when you have like Robin Hood or King Arthur, stories like that, they're so much part of our cultural zeitgeist, that and they're not owned characters. Like the whole world collectively has a sense of ownership to them, but it's not a character that was created by this person in this year that they have, a copyright for the story that they wrote about. Uh, because we're talking about stories that have existed for hundreds of years, or at this point, 1,000 years or more for some of those tales. And I think that when I see those stories, when I see another Robin Hood, when I see another Arthur story, uh, I don't I don't have that same kind of really another one of those that I get when I have like, oh, they're doing another Fast and Furious movie. Oh, they're doing another Mission Impossible. I thought the last one was the last one. Oh, no, apparently he's not done yet. He's waiting until he looks like, you know, the Crypt Keeper, and he's just going to keep doing them forever or whatever. The thing is, because I do feel like some of those ongoing series needs to stop ongoing, and they should have maybe stopped ongoing a long time ago. Uh, yeah, but so I don't have the same feeling for those that I have for some of the newer things. And there's some that I just kind of treasure. It's like if I saw an animated Robin Hood, which I've seen, or the next live action Robin Hood, and this one's about how there actually is no Robin Hood, and it was really Maid Marian who did this stuff because of her charity work or whatever. I'd be like, I am down, I'm into it. Show me that story.
No, I understand perfectly what you're saying, which is why I really appreciate the fact there's only one Highlander film. There were no sequels. There was no television show. They're not doing a reboot this year. No, there's just the one Highlander movie. That's all there is. So yeah, I understand.
Yes, and I understand that feeling completely, and I agree with you 1,000%. Yes.
Normally, I'm of the point the originals are always there for me. So I usually don't get upset when people make sequels. I did get upset when they did a Time Bandits reimagining last year. I
Mhm.
really got upset, and I realized it's because again it was tied up with as a treasured childhood memory, and it did become part of they're ruining my childhood, which is BS. But still, again, the originals are always there. You can always go back and watch the originals.
Sure.
I have a feeling though that again, the only so what you're saying is if it's in copyright, it bothers you more than if it's not in copyright. I think it's just because of volume. Because again, if it's in copyright, they tend not to be as what's the word I'm looking for? Adventuresome. They're not as challenging, not as experimental. I think when something is out of copyright, you have to put a new spin on it. You have to develop some sort of new theme, new idea, bring forth and use it in a new context, the work.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes the stuff, which is why I think copyright law is it's so overextended in this country. And it really, I've had this soapbox before about my views of copyright. I'm a librarian. I think information should be free. I understand that people need to make money off of it, but I'm sorry, you shouldn't have a corporation have it for over 100 years. That's just BS.
No, I agree with you. And I will readily admit that I have great pendulum swings in the way that I think about stuff because having said how much I enjoy seeing classics like King Arthur or Robin Hood reimagined in new and different ways forever. That's fine. I have this really locked in view of things that are more recent, not necessarily that are under copyright, but when I see a thing that I was put together in one way, and I think and I look at that one way that it was put together by an original author 50 years ago, and they it's like they did this thing and it was great and magnificent. And then 20 years, 30 years later, someone else came along and did something else with it, and they changed stuff about it. It's like it's not the same author, maybe it's not the same in a film thing, maybe it's not the same cast, because it's like, oh no, we didn't agree to do that. And then it's like, oh well, we're gonna run with this. And then I get that feeling of, wait, what are you doing? Why are you messing with that? Um, yeah. Here's an example. This is not the only example that exists, but here's an example. Sometimes I don't like it when you change the basic tone of a thing to make it new. An easy example of that is when they made the old TV series Dragnet into a movie. You had the Dragnet series, which was serious. It was, there's a thousand tales in the dirty city, and this is one of them, kind of a thing. And they turned it into a slapstick comedy. And that's been done with a lot of things. They did it with Starsky and Hutch, some other
I'll throw
things.
one out there for you, a couple out there that just really, this really makes me mad because people know it for the parody. They don't know it for the originals. My favorite, the most influential cartoonist is a guy called Alex Toth. Alex Toth created, among other things, Space Ghost and Birdman. And
Uh,
those are I love watching those as childhoods. I can't talk to people about it because all they know are the Cartoon Network parodies, the Adult Swim parodies
yeah,
of the characters. They don't have no idea what the original characters were like whatsoever. So I
yeah,
understand what you're going through there.
yeah. And so I hate that. I hate that. And well, and then sometimes you have other things where you have the deal where sometimes people mistake genre for setting. Like, oh, you're on a spaceship. This must be a science fiction story. Well, no, space is just where it's happening. And that's a thing that happened with the Alien movies that I mentioned we're watching now. Because yes, they happen in space, but the original Alien movie is a horror movie, and the second one, Aliens, is an action movie. The third one is like a drama. And then the fourth one's kind of an adventure movie, almost a heist film, the fourth one, all of those with Sigourney Weaver. And space is just where it happens. It's like none of those movies are actually science fiction. None of them. They're just happen to happen in space.
Um, I'll throw out something else that bothers me, and I've mentioned this before.
Mhm.
I'm a short story reader. I love short stories
Mhm.
because I'm like, okay, give me the idea, give me the characters, have a beginning, middle, and end, and we're done. Let's move on to something else.
Yeah.
And I've realized over time that I'm very much in the minority. People want the same story over and over and over and over again. And so what I hate is the open-ended series, which is what's dominated the bestseller especially with young adult literature for the last and genre literature for the last 30 years has been it's all been the never-ending series, the series that literally goes on forever. And part of it is the fact that, yeah, they're just milking the audience for money at some point. But
Mhm.
it's also kind of like whatever happened to the beginning, the middle, and the end. Whatever happened to endings are my favorite part of the book sometimes. I love endings. And again, I'm finding out that I'm alone in that. People do not want the story to end. They want to be told the same story over and over and over again. I was always, as a kid, wanted to go on to the next thing, the next story, the next character, the next situation.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that character's gone. Let's move on to something else. Type of idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I feel like that is a way that comic books suffer
Oh yeah, very much
because
so.
the idea is it's like, oh no, everyone le loves these characters. We must continue writing stories about these characters forever. And in order to do that, these characters must remain 30 years old for 1,000 years. And I I really hate that. I think that it has led to some really bad storylines, really in all the comic books. This is not company specific. DC has problems with it, Marvel has problems with it. A lot of the other comic companies are younger, so maybe they haven't really hit having the problem yet, but they will if they keep going that way. Um, and it's problematic. I mean, like in Marvel and DC, you have a few characters that are because of the nature of the kind of character they are forever young because they are a deity or a semi-deity, or they're literally made of rock, or they constantly have access to some rejuvenating potion that keeps them young, or whatever the thing is. There are a few characters that have that kind of element and can be young forever. But honestly, they should be surrounded by the old people that, 50 years ago had been their sidekicks.
It's interesting because this is a major conflict that's happened both Marvel and DC in the last 20 years. Those in the know what I'm talking about. During the last 20 years, we've had editors and writers come in who have reset the universes so they match what the universe was like when they were first reading comics. And it's been a real problem because to some extent, a lot of the writers were developing storylines. They were letting, I mean, for example, Peter Parker was married. He had a kid on the way. He was teaching. He was a science teacher and stuff like that. New editor comes in, bam, back to how it was in the 1970s when he was reading the comics. Same thing with Hal Jordan over on the DC side of things. So these type of things happen where basically I want the character to be as when I was a kid type of thing, not realizing that some people like the legacy aspects of comics. Some
Yeah,
people are reading comic books for the idea of the character improving over time or new characters coming out of the legacy of it.
yeah,
And so at least with the big two, with DC and Marvel, there's this real push and pull with do we go with the idea that Batman is now in his 40s or 50s, or do we go with the idea of Batman still as a young man who's still doing things? And it's a real it's kind of interesting to see how things go. And eventually at some point somebody will reboot it all back to they're all back in the 30s again just
sure.
because.
It does, well, talking Batman, you get to that weird thing because it's like, oh, Bruce Wayne is 30 years old and Barbara Gordon is also 30 years old. And
Dick Grayson is 30
Dick
years
Grayson is
old.
30 years old, and Damian, Bruce's son, is also 30 years old. It's like time doesn't work that way. It's like I don't even know how time works, and I know time doesn't work that way, you know. Yeah, it's a problem. And the thing is that I don't know why all those writers don't have the courage or the gumption or the authority to do either one of two things. Either allow the characters to grow and change and age, or if you have a story that really needs to take place when Bruce Wayne or Peter Parker or, when the character was 30 years old, do it as a flashback.
Yeah.
This is just like, okay, well, this is 1984 when this character was 30 years old. Our country, our nation is hugely into nostalgia. That would totally work. You could do that. And you could have a 12, 24, 48, episode issue arc doing that, and that would be fine. And you don't have to manipulate or change the current timeline.
Yeah, the canon versus non-canon is always a huge problem too. I mean, they've tried doing this a few times in some of the series, and some people really like it, some people really hate it. I'm at this point, just tell stories. I
Yeah,
mean, who cares what's in continuity, what's not in continuity? I
yeah.
mean, there will be people that get mad. Well, that's not in canon. Who cares at this point? Just write the stories you want to write.
Well, yeah, and I mean it is that thing where it's like the canon is non-existent for any of these older comic books because you have the thing where maybe probably the first 12 issues of a comic were actually written by the person who created the comic. And then after that, they were written by other people. And for these characters like Batman, Superman, even Fantastic Four, Captain America, Spider-Man, all these characters, they've had at least a dozen different writers over the years since they originally started. And honestly, everything after the original creator is fan fiction. Everything. So the only canon is whatever that first 12 issue arc was that the creator wrote, and nothing else really counts.
Interesting take.
All right. Well, we have rambled a lot, and I
We
don't
have.
know, but I was entertained. But I should,
Hey, if you were entertained well, please comment in the comments.
that's right. I'm going to go ahead and announce just a couple of things that are happening around our community, and uh, and then maybe we'll wrap up for this day. There's several things happening at Aiken Auditorium here on campus in the next few weeks, so you'll hear me talk about Aiken Auditorium a couple of times. Starting with, there's a Red River Valley Choral Festival this Thursday, October 23rd at 5:30 in Aiken Auditorium. Then also in Aiken Auditorium, but next week, Tuesday, October 28th at 7:30, they're having a spooktacular chamber music concert. Backdoor Theater, our friends at Backdoor Theater, will be having an evening of improv on October 31st. There's a wind ensemble concert on Tuesday, November 11th at 7:30 in Aiken Auditorium. This one surprised me, and I'm really thrilled that it's happening. Just I'm probably not going to get to go, but I'm just thrilled that this is a thing that I can say out loud. ZZ Top will be in concert at K. Yeager Coliseum on November 18th. And then follow that up with a percussion ensemble concert Tuesday, November 18th at 7:30. I guess you actually can't follow it up. Those are on the same day. So you have to pick your poison. You got to either do the percussion ensemble concert or ZZ Top. I know that can be a tough choice for some people. Anyway, for more information about the things I have mentioned today and other local activities, please check out the events section of the MSU Texas homepage and the calendar at discoverwichitafalls.com/events. And if you have an event you'd like us to announce, or if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, or if you'd like to volunteer to appear on our show, please send an email to library@msutexas.edu. All right, Ryan, before we actually wrap up and say goodbye, do you have any final thoughts?
Symbols, themes, sequels. What does it all mean? I don't know.
And with that, we will leave you. Goodbye, everybody. Catch us again next month.